Iraq is a republic in West Asia, Middle East. The country borders Syria to the northwest, Turkey to the north, Iran to the east, Kuwait to the south and Saudi Arabia and Jordan to the west. Iraq has a coastal strip towards the Persian Gulf, in the south. Iraq is rich in resources, with the world's second largest deposits of oil and gas. It is therefore, but also due to political influence, of strategic importance. The population of about 40 million is culturally composed. The Arab people is dominant, and Islam is the main religion, but with divisions between Sunnis and Shiites. Official languages are Arabic and Kurdish. Iraq is a new state-created state after World War I, first under British rule, and then independent in 1932. The country has a long, documented history, and ancient Mesopotamia is considered the cradle of civilization. The area's history includes several civilizations and dynasties, and in modern times is closely linked to both the Islamic world and the Ottoman Empire, Arab nationalism and the Middle East conflict. Iraq has recently been involved in 3 Gulf Wars, the last of which, the US-led invasion in 2003, led to the fall of the Ba'ath regime, civil war and a change in the internal distribution of power. The name Iraq has an unclear origin and meaning. It is attributed to Sumerian times, and one theory is that it is derived from the city of Uruk, and that it originally means settlement or city. Another explanation is like the plural of the Arabic word Irq, which means root. Geography and environment. Iraq is mainly a desert country, with fertile areas by the 2 great rivers Euphrates and Tigris, which flow from the sources in Turkey through the country. Water is a vital necessity for Iraq and a battleground in the region. On the river plains there are belts of cultivated land. More than half of the land area consists of desert. During the First Gulf War in 1991, oil wells were set on fire, with major environmental consequences. The same thing happened during the war against the Islamic State, in 2017. Iraq's plant life varies with the regions, adapted to the predominantly arid climate. The forests are mainly gone due to logging and overgrazing. Far to the south there are swamp areas with reeds and grass. These were largely wiped out during the Ba'athist regime because Saddam Hussein wanted to expel the Swim Arabs who lived there, as punishment for their role in the uprising against Saddam's regime in 1991. The drainage of the area led to desertification and ecological catastrophe, and tens of thousands of swarms were displaced. The fauna of Iraq consists essentially of smaller species, with rodents and reptiles. Larger species include rock badgers and desert lynx, golden jackals and gazelles. More than 400 bird species have been observed. People and society. Iraq is one of the most populous states in the Middle East, with around 40 million inhabitants, and is more ethnically and culturally complex than other countries in the region. Kurds make up to a quarter of the population, and have internal autonomy in northern Iraq. Both these and the Arab majority are predominantly Muslims. The Kurds are mainly Sunni. The Arabs are divided between Sunnis and Shiites, with the latter making up a majority of around 60 to 65%, and dominating in the southern part of the country. There are also other small minority groups, such as Turkmens, Yazidis, Shabaks, Assyrians and others. Iraq has recently undergone major societal changes. First there was development related to oil extraction in the early 20th century, then social and economic development under the Ba'ath regime from 1968. The Ba'ath regime nationalized Iraqi oil and was behind a comprehensive development of industry, health system and education. This development was weakened by wars and sanctions that set the country back, economically and socially. As a result of the US-led occupation of 2003, Iraq was marked by violence and conflict, which has persisted. State and politics. Iraq was a monarchy when the country became independent from Britain in 1932. After the military coup in 1958, the monarchy was replaced by a republic. The country has had an unstable modern history with frequent regime changes. After the Ba'ath Party took power in 1968, the regime stabilized, especially after Saddam Hussein came to power in 1979 and gradually built up into a dictator. The state, and the party, then played a key role in Iraqi society, and there was no room for real opposition. Following the regime change forced by the US-led invasion in 2003, a new political system has come into place, with a new constitution and a popularly elected National Assembly. The constitution states that Iraq is an Islamic, democratic and parliamentary federal republic. The National Assembly appoints the president, who mostly has ceremonial duties, but also appoints the prime minister. Following the fall of the Ba'athist regime, 3 democratic elections have been held at the National Assembly. The election in 2018 had a low turnout of 44.5%. Iraq is a member of the UN and the UN's specialized agencies, including the World Bank, as well as the Arab League and OPEC. History: the area that makes up Iraq has a rich ancient history, and the central parts of the country constituted ancient Mesopotamia. Subsequently, the country was placed under a number of different rulers, including the Persians and Mongols. The greatest influence came from the Arabs, who took over the country from 634 and introduced Islam. Baghdad has long been the seat of the Caliphate, the headquarters of the Islamic world. The Ottoman period was from 1534 to 1918. As a modern state, Iraq is a consequence of the dissolution of the Ottoman Empire after the First World War, when the great powers established new states, including Iraq. The area was first ruled as a mandate area by Britain, before Iraq became an independent state in 1932 under King Faisal. The monarchy was abolished by a military coup in 1958, after which new coups or coup attempts followed until the Ba'ath Party came to power in 1968. From 1980 to 1988, Iraq was engaged in a devastating war with neighboring Iran, referred to as the First Gulf War. The war had its cause in an old territorial dispute over oil-rich areas in the heart of the Persian Gulf. In 1990, Iraq invaded neighboring Kuwait. This triggered the Second Gulf War in 1991, in which a US-led multinational military force carried out extensive attacks on Iraq and into Kuwait, Operation Desert Storm. In 2003, the United States invaded Iraq again, removing the incumbent Ba'athist regime and dictator Saddam Hussein. The US occupation lasted until 2010. The Iraqi state has faced internal strife in several areas since the fall of the Ba'athist regime, including a revolt by Sunni groups, targeting the now Shia-dominated regime from 2013-2014. At the same time, in 2014, the Islamic State, jihadist group took control of large areas of land in the north of the country, including the city of Mosul. This led the United States and other countries to re-engage militarily in Iraq, in support of the government against IS, including through Operation Inherent Resolve, OIR. Norway also sent military instructors to Iraq, including to the Kurdish Peshmerga force. IS was largely repulsed in 2017, and Iraqi authorities regained territorial control. Economy and business: Iraq has large natural resources which, especially from the 1970s, when oil prices rose, were the basis for the country's economic modernization. Much was invested in the development of both industry and agriculture, as well as in military rearmament. The dependence on oil exports meant that international sanctions in the 1990s, with a ban on oil exports, other than to finance the import of food and medicine, hit hard. Food production was downgraded as a result of modernization. The Iraqi economy was further affected by the 3 Gulf Wars. Following the US invasion in 2003, a large-scale economic reconstruction program was launched, first led by the US administration, then by the Iraqi government, with international support. Before the war in 1980, Iraq was the second largest economy in the Arab world after Saudi Arabia, and with the second largest export of oil. The reconstruction is largely based on increased revenues from the petroleum sector. Knowledge and culture: under the Ba'athist regime, Iraq developed a comprehensive education system with free schooling for all children up to the age of 11. Higher and higher education was offered, also abroad, and Iraq was considered to have one of the best educated populations in the entire region. From the 1990s, the quality fell as a result of economic decline in the wake of the wars. Under the Ba'athist regime, there was little room for opposition and freedom of speech, including freedom of the press. Iraq's culture is characterized by the country's ethnic composition, especially the Arab and Kurdish, where the latter has its own language, its own traditions and cultural forms of expression. The country has a number of ancient monuments, and historical and cultural values were used in nation building to create an Iraqi identity and pride. In recent times, Iraq has produced several leading artists in the Arab world, including poets and sculptors.